Well, good morning. Welcome to Debbie's Back Porch. So glad to have you with us again. For dinner, I'm making meatloaf. And you know, there are a few truths about meatloaf. It's never the same twice, and it's always better made at home. My friend always loved meatloaf, and I changed it a little after I became diabetic. And my challenge was to make it healthier and still yummy because he loved it. So here are the ingredients. You can pause and write them down. And yes, they're a little different than most meatloaf ingredients. But I'll show you how this works. Let's get cooking. So I always start with about 3 slices of bread. It can be stale bread. I prefer this to breadcrumbs because if you use breadcrumbs, you generally need to rehydrate them. And that's how people started putting milk in their meatloaf. And I don't like milk in the meatloaf. So I just trim off 3 or 4 pieces of bread, and I'm going to drop them into my food processor and chop them up. And before I had a food processor, I would just chop them up with a knife and then crumble them in my hands. But it's so much easier with a food processor, which, you know, I've only had a food processor 2 or 3 years, and I don't know how I lived all those years without it. I use it all the time. So I'm just going to pulse this and beat it up until it's really, really fine. And yes, you can use dried breadcrumbs, you can use oatmeal, you can use crackers. I like this. Now this is where I'm going to really vary from your traditional meatloaf. I have here some carrots, celery, and onion. I'm going to chop them up really, really fine in my food processor. If you don't have a food processor, you can do it with a grater. And then I'm going to saute them in a little butter. Why do I do this, you say? Because I wanted to stop using ketchup. It has lots of extra unneeded sugar, and while it tastes really, really good and it adds a sweetness to your meatloaf, so do carrots. And everybody puts onions, I guess. I don't like big chunks of onions in my meatloaf, so I just started grinding it or grating it all up to bring out that sweetness. Also, you know, well, we're going to put a little salt and pepper in here. And I'm adding just a little touch of thyme, about a half a teaspoonful, as I was saying. Also, you know, if you have kids or adults in your house that won't eat vegetables, they'll never notice these. So I'm going to saute these until they start getting a little brown, turn them off and let them cool, and then we'll go to the next step. I have here about 2 pounds of ground beef. This is 85/15, so the fat will cook out. And this is 2 eggs beaten. And then we're going to add our carrot, onion, and celery mixture. And you know, that's still pretty juicy. And this is going to be a really juicy meatloaf. Now I have here a half pint of my homemade tomato paste. Nothing added to it except a little salt when I made it. And it's not as thick as paste you buy. I'm going to pour a little bit of it off, about 1/3 of it off, into a couple tablespoons full of my Splenda brown sugar. And I'm going to pour the rest of it into my meatloaf mixture. That's a couple tablespoons full of Worcestershire. And here is a little mustard. Now this is all I'm putting into this. But along with the carrots and the onions and the celery, the flavor of this is going to just pop. And you're not going to miss the ketchup. Now I'm going to add my breadcrumbs. And we're going to mix it all together. Now at this point you're just going to have to do a little judging. You want this to be firm enough to stick together. But you don't want it to be dry. And if you determine that you need more breadcrumbs to make it stick together well, you can surely add another slice. But this is firm enough. Now I have my oven preheated to 350, and I've got this in my cast iron roaster, and I'm going to put a little glaze on it, which is just the tomato paste and the Splenda brown sugar. And you can use regular brown sugar if you'd prefer. And I'm going to put about 2/3 of it on, and I'll cook my meatloaf about 30 minutes, take it out, add the rest of the glaze, and then cook it for another 30 minutes or so. We want to cook it until the internal temperature is about 155 to 160. And depending on your oven and the size of the meatloaf, that's going to take a total of an hour to an hour and 10 minutes or so. And I'm just going to spread this out. I want it to be pretty thin. And you don't have to glaze your meatloaf, but it really adds to the flavor and appearance. In the oven for 30 minutes at 350. I'll be back. So this is after 30 minutes. I'm going to put the rest of the glaze on it. And yes, lots of stuff cooks out of this. We're going to take it out of the fat before we serve it. And you know, you can put it on a rack if you would rather. I've used a rack and sometimes it breaks, so it's just easier for me to do it this way. Back in the oven for about 30 more minutes. Another 30 minutes takes us to 160 degrees. I'm going to take this out, put it on a platter, plate it up. And here we go. I'm ready to eat. And just, I want you just to look at that. You know, that is moist. It's not tough. Used lots of nice juicy veggies and the fresh breadcrumbs, and the texture of this is just wonderful. And you can see the texture in the whole meatloaf there. No big chunks of vegetables, but they're all through it. And let's give it a taste. Meatloaf is the ultimate comfort food, you know, with some mashed potatoes and some peas. Sorry, my hand's in the way. You know, I'm reaching around a camera. This is just wonderful. And you know, everybody has their own style of meatloaf. I like this. Number one, it feels a little healthier with the veggies and less sugar. Number two, it tastes amazing. The flavor goes all through it. You should give this a try at least once. Thank you for joining us on Debbie's Back Porch. Hope to see you again tomorrow.